Okay, a very good afternoon, everybody. And today, T and Tales, I have very interesting friends with me today. First and foremost, Manjiri. She is the 50 most influential woman in Maharashtra. Not only that, she's the Agatha Christie of India. She writes amazing novels. In fact, I heard Shashi Thirushi that she was kind of match for Dan Brown, and she is a filmmaker, a producer. And once her book did not get through into the literary fest, she started her own literary fest. That is the kind of lady she is. And then she also started a spiritual fest, and it really intrigued me. Somebody who has been there, done so much, seen so much. Why did she enter into spiritual quest? And obviously, that meant she met a lot of spiritual leaders. So she's our friend here. And the second friend is again a very interesting person. She is Ganga Nandani. I'd gone to Rishikesh, and when I was in Rishikesh, I had the privilege of doing the Ganga Aarti at Pamat Ashram. And there I saw this young lady who was very, very peaceful. I know she was in sheer bliss as she was standing there. And I could not resist but inquire about her. And then I found out that she was studying in Berkeley University. She has done her master's in molecular biology and psychology. And then from there, she had come to India to trace her roots. And then she stayed on in Parmat Ashram. And that really amazed me. And it got me thinking as to how come, when I was younger, at my time, when you talk about spiritualism, meant it was like a retirement hobby that you would pick up, no? When you retire from everything, then you would do some bhajan, kirtan, and some, no, some charitable work. And today's time, I see a lot of youngsters moving towards spiritualism, understanding, talking of karma yoga, and I see a different class apart and the level at which they are and the way they look into things. And that really intrigued me. I thought, okay, let me get two interesting friends for you to talk about spiritualism, talk about India, talk about how they view it, talk about youngsters' fascination with spiritualism, and how is it that at such a young age, somebody who is in Los Angeles studying, and takes on spiritualism and is able to contribute to spiritualism. So this is why I have these two interesting friends for you, Manjiri and Ganga Nandani. I think Nandini has some issue with Wi-Fi, so she'll be coming on and out. But no, welcome both of you. And as I start today's tea and tales, I request Nandini to begin with. I see her that she's connected now. Nandini, can you tell us your story? Like you were in Berkeley University doing your masters, and then you moved to India, and then suddenly you took on to spiritualism at a young age. And as I was mentioning earlier in my conversation, I saw you very blissful when I was doing the Ganga Aarti at Parmat Ashram in Rishikesh. And I thought, why would I not share your story with everybody who would be inspired? And so over to you, Nandini. You tell us something about yourself, your story, your journey in spiritualism. How do you see it?
Hello. Can you hear?
We can hear you, Nandini. So it's just a bit of a lag, I think, because the Wi-Fi may be weak, there. So if you could just speak.
Because I can't hear you very clearly. So if you would like to go ahead and begin, and then I will try to troubleshoot from our end.
Okay, fair. So while Nandini troubleshoots and gets back with a better signal, let me speak to Manjari. Manjari, you have hosted so many festivals, and you hosted spiritual festival also. So your interaction with a lot of spiritual masters would be very intense at a very high level. And I see a lot of youngsters now, joining or taking on spiritualism. And as I was mentioning earlier, when I was young at that time, as a youngster, hardly we talked about spiritualism. So how do you see this movement happening? How do you see this trend happening? What's your view, and what is it that's so fascinating about spiritualism that attracts so many people? And because of your interaction with so many different masters, I think you're the best person to answer this question.
I think it kind of all begins with a lot of questions that every one of us has today. I think, and especially youngsters today, they are faced with the how should I say a vast ocean of issues and problems. They have to be competitive. There's cutthroat competition out there. There's this whole focus on materialistic gains. Success has its own definition, and to cope with this with thousands of others is becoming a kind of a moot point for everyone. So I think youngsters more and more are realizing that they need a kind of an inner safety net. And because while they're doing all this, they need another component which is going to keep them sane. And I think that is the attraction towards spirituality today, that they're all trying to find means of trying to balance their life, trying to cope with the stresses of life, and trying to cope with the issues that manifest out of stress. So I think this whole approach to spirituality is that they are all looking for some kind of a solution, some kind of an easy path, some kind of an answer to the way we are living life today. So I think that is the main attraction, how to live life day to day with peace of mind, without stress, yet achieving everything that they want to achieve. I think that is really the attraction today.
So, if I may ask you, Manjari, I think since you meet so many people, what are three, four things that you would tell somebody like who doesn't who has no understanding and no some basic thing that a person would do to be able to be at a less stress level, like you mentioned, or be a bit more spiritual than what they are. No, is it
Yeah.
so? And then what is it that would be the differentiator between religion and spiritualism? No, I think these questions keeps on emerging. A lot of minds people
Yeah.
get confused. Is it a religious practice? Is it a spiritual practice? What does it mean? And how can I become spiritual? And should I have to go to somebody,
Yeah.
or can I try to become my own? So there are a plethora of questions which appear in somebody's mind when they think about it.
So I'll answer that other question first about what do I do. Honestly, I mean, I know that it's very difficult, and it's very easy to tell someone to be spiritual when you're faced with issues and problems and jobs and salary cuts and stuff like that. So I like to follow. I myself have faced a lot of problems in trying to raise my festivals, trying to get my books published, and a whole lot of other issues. So there is this chatur bhav that is kind of suggested by Patanjali. Everybody knows Patanjali, and this is a four formula attitude. I think he suggested to adopt, that each one of us should adopt for a spiritual life. And what are those four chatur bhavs? They are Maitri, then they are Karuna, they are Mudita, and there is Upeksha. So, what are these four? Maitri is when you see someone who's happy, who's cheerful, who's living their life in bloom, so to say, you should always be friends with them, because their happiness, when you're happy for their happiness, it rubs off onto you. Secondly, if you see somebody who's suffering, whether it's an animal or a human being, you should offer compassion. That's karuna, because you're trying to alleviate their suffering, which is a good thing to do. Thirdly, if you see somebody who's virtuous, who's trying to achieve something beyond their capacities, who's trying to help people, who's trying to be noble, you should cheer them, because that is udita, mudita, which means you, when you cheer them and when you support them, you're actually sending out a message that this is what we would also like to do. And lastly, and most importantly, if you see anyone negative, bad human beings, whatever your definition of bad is, evil human beings, the only thing to do is avoid them, and that is upeksha. So if you, according to Patanjali, if you follow these four, adopt these four attitudes of life, you are on your spiritual path automatically, because these four involve a clarity of thinking, choices that you need to make, compassion. You become a humane person on the whole, and you're automatically on the path of spirituality. So I would suggest that people adopt something which is by great sage Patanjali. Coming to your issue of religion and spirituality, which is always kind of locked together, but I don't look at it that way. I think they're two separate tracks going parallelly. For me, religion is something which is an expression of faith. It is something which is dogmatic, which pertains to rituals and traditions, and it's a journey of a community. It takes the whole, they take everyone together. A religion does. Spirituality, on the other hand, is something more personal. I feel it is an internal journey. It is a journey of trying to connect to your higher consciousness. It's a personal empowerment, and it is a free flowing thing. It is not dogmatic. So I feel religion must have spirituality as an element in it, but spirituality does not necessarily have religion in it. So I think there's two separate things. They go together, but that is how I look at it. And I feel that all and over and everything, I think if you treat every single thing in your life with love and compassion, you're already a good human being.
I think so beautifully put, Manjari. I to tell this to you. See, there's a time in my life when I realized that whatever outwardly I had to see, be it the world or be it work or be it
Yeah,
the beauty of nature or human beings, the beauty, the entire roller coaster of emotions. I thought, okay, I have seen a lot of this, and God has been kind to me. Should I go inwards and let me see what can I see inside me, and how do I move inwards? And then I was trying to figure out how do I learn this art. So as I researched more, I understood that in a scientific way, I think two, three people have been able to put the stepwise on spiritualism, and Patanjali, as a great sage, is one of them. Now, I think he's one of the rare sages who has put spiritualism on a very stepwise scientific basis.
yeah,
That you follow step one, step two, step three, step four. No, you know where you are, and that's why I
right.
was so intrigued when I heard that you mentioned that he mentioned that just do these four things. You're already in the path of
Yes,
spiritualism. No, how
yes.
beautifully he put
It's
it,
very simply put. Yeah,
and
yeah,
thousands of years back, no, and let's say something which is relevant thousands of years back, you fast forward today, and you still find relevant, no. That
yes,
be in the company of people who are happy, who are good human beings, no, have
that's
compassion
right.
towards who are not doing well or suffering, no, ensure that you're able
Yeah,
to do so. Cheer noble
yeah,
causes, noble people, and fourth,
yes,
avoid negative people. See how
yes,
simply put, no, and this is
yes.
like relevant irrespective of what era, what time are we in. And then he says you are on the path of spiritualism. So wonderfully put, Manjari. It's
Thank you.
amazing, no? Yeah, but I have seen that you've also interacted with the Dalai Lama and various other spiritual leaders who are more relevant from today's time, and their learnings and their speaking. So over years of these different leaders who emerged on the spiritual field, and they have sent something. I normally see a very very common thread across all. No, do you see that, Manjari? And what is the common thread that you see across all spiritual leaders when they talk, or when no they have written something or no spoken about it earlier?
I think all of them, almost all of them, talk about spirituality being an inner journey. They all say that you don't have to look outwards, you have to look inwards. All the answers, all everything that you're seeking is within you. I think everyone says that without a doubt. The second thing, which Dalai Lama is, of course, says it, and almost every spiritual guru, thinker, human person would say, is that love and compassion are the prerequisites of living. If you want to have peace in this world, if you want to have harmony in this world, it has to begin with love and compassion, because that is the base and the foundation of a good being. And I think these two are the common things in everything, and everyone says. And of course, trying to, so we have these five Pancha Koshas. Everyone talks about the Pancha Koshas, I think, which is our the five layers of existence that we have, from a pranamaya kosha to our what is it, pranamaya kosha, manomaya kosha, anandmaya kosha, and vijnanamaya kosha. So all those five put together, I didn't say step by step, but all those five together, our inner spiritual journey is moving from this pranamaya kosha, which is our body, to the cosmic. I think that is the entire journey. And for that, if you have to, whichever path you choose, there are many paths, I think. And whatever your goal is, whether it is enlightenment, which of course the yogis are after, the common man may not necessarily go after it. But even if it's just living your life, and in balance, and inviting the positive energies around you, I think no matter what your goal is, one thing is for certain: each one of us is looking for peace of mind. And for that peace of mind, what is important is detachment. I think so, detachment of the outcome. And I think this is what everyone talks about, or all the spiritual gurus talk about: detachment, of letting go. So you do your duty and you let go. And that is why I feel that karma plays a very important role in this whole spiritual journey. Your karma is, simply put, action reaction, like Sadhguru says. It's action and reaction. So if you act in a certain way, you're going to get reactions in a certain way. If you sow well, you reap well. If you do good, good will come back to you. And I think good karma is the essence of being spiritual. So I think that is what each one and everyone is saying.
Okay, let me put something more interesting from my perspective, whatever little I read. No, so when
Yeah,
you look at Patanjali's Sutra, over
yeah,
time he mentions what benefits do you also get when you move in this journey. No, certainly you
yeah,
have more powers than a normal human being has. No, it
yeah,
makes you in a way supernatural. No, and all this like comic heroes that you see, they get superpowers. So in a way, you get
yeah,
superpowers. If I go back into some of the ancient Indian text, you had this Asur and Devtas. No, so
yeah,
the Asura also gained power by going inwards, and they
yeah,
gained supernatural powers, which they misused, and Devtas also gained supernatural power and they used it well. But the yogi is the one who doesn't bother about all this, and they go further, and they are the ones who get enlightened. No? So a lot of people get stuck the moment they get some minor benefits of spiritualism, and they get carried away in that, and they start misusing it. But true
Yes.
yogi, for him or her, these has no relevance. And when he or
Yes.
she is able to identify her own self, no true self, that is what enlightenment is all about. No, it goes.
Right.
So in
Yeah.
the journey, no, what's your view on this? Because this to me is very interesting when I heard this perspective of the so-called the Asurs and the Devtas, and they follow the same path, no, for getting the supernatural powers. And when they get it by moving inwards, some use it well, some don't use it well, no. Do you have any view on this, Manjari? Very different from what normally people talk about.
No. So do you mean are human beings also like that? Is that what you mean? Is that what you
No,
mean?
no. See, in the end, like who becomes a devta or a asur is the
Yeah.
human being only who goes
Yes.
into a spiritual path, and when
Right.
they get somewhere, no, like the three-fourth of it, and they get this
Yeah.
supernatural power because of
Yeah.
them being able to influence their body and mind. Some
Yeah.
use it well for benefit of
Yeah.
people, some
Yeah.
don't use it well. That was
Yeah.
definition
That.
of asur and devta, no, earlier on.
Yeah.
So when you move the spiritualism also, and you get like more and more powerful into this practice, you get all this powers coming through. But a true yogi is one who goes beyond this
Yeah.
and then obtains enlightenment. No. So
Yeah.
now when we talk about that, people have to have love, compassion as they move on this path. You also have stories of people, no, who do it a bit differently. So
Yeah.
do you have a view on this, or is hello, Nandini? Good to have you back. Could you hear? Can you hear us now?
Yeah, I hope this will work.
Yeah, it is working, Nandi. It's so good to have you. I just asked Manjri a question, and then I'll tell you the questions and
But
you answer it. No, whenever
Yeah. Yeah.
your question for you is, Nandini, that you have been studying at Berkeley University. You have done your MSc in molecular biology. You've done psychology, and you come to India at such a young age, and you take this path of spiritualism. And I was mentioning in my talk that when I'd gone for the Ganga Aarti at Parmat Ashram, I saw it was a very blissful state as the Aarti was progressing. The question is, how has your journey been? And what all did you experience? And how do you see it? And how do you see youngsters, becoming spiritual? So I just want to hear a journey. Something that will-
it's I'm slightly having issues hearing you because your voice comes cut off. But I think you're asking about my journey and my experience on this path and how I came to Rishikesh and came to the ashram. So
Yeah,
that's what I could pick up from the chopping pieces of the audio. Um, it's been a blessing, Tapanji. You've come to the ashram, you've seen how beautiful, how divine the ashram is. And so many people have come here and really been very touched, very blessed by just being here in this sacred land. And similarly, I had come here a few years back. Now it's almost 10, 11 years, Tapanji, since I came here. And I think that this was not the plan. I don't think I had ever anticipated that my life would take such a turn. I don't think it was very, if it felt like, some people will meet me and say कि ओहो आपने कितना त्याग किया, तो ऐसा त्याग जैसा कभी लगा नहीं. And I think that that's what makes it really beautiful, because इतनी सहजता से, सरलता से एक इस जगह की, ऋषिकेश की, गंगा जी के तट की एक विशेषता है. और वो विशेषता कि आपके रूह को छू छू लेती है वो. And something changes very innately and you connect. Like for me, it felt like I had come home. And Tapanji, coming from America, where from the age of 18, you do part-time job, part-time work, you're, out of the house at the age of 18, and then you're working and you're going to school. That feeling of coming home, that feeling of settling in was such a beautiful feeling that I thought कि अगर यहाँ पे सेवा करने का अवसर मिले, तो that would be a really beautiful blessing. And sure, Lord behold, it was on a Ganga Yatra that I happened to come here, and like I said, it was not planned at all. Just happened that my father invited me on this yatra, and it was at the authority. which was the then Prime Minister. And there was a group of 20 or 25 of us, and I happened to be the last add-on into that group. And we were making this yatra in the upper Ganga region, and one of the first places that we stopped, because at the time we could not go up further to Gangotri because there was a landslide along the way, was Rishikesh. And so we parked our cars here and we came, and the first thing that we did, Tapanji, was the aarti. And that was so divine. I know we came in really late. There's a group of 20 of us, and I was the youngest person in that group. And we came into the aarti, and I just listened to the aarti. I listened to Puja Swamiji's voice in the aarti, and there's something that just clicked, and it felt like I'm home. It didn't register logistically, like how many years I'm going to stay here. I didn't plan any of that, but it just, that feeling was so strong that it became 1 year, 2 years, and then I realized I wasn't supposed to go back anywhere. This was where I was supposed to be.
It's marvelous, and I'm a witness to it. When I did the Aarti, I chanced to see you, and the bliss on your face it was so amazing that I don't remember I've seen anybody so blissful and happy. No, and this is precisely why I invited you, as a friend to this event, because I want millions of people to understand and see that when we're looking for happiness and bliss at a young age, somebody who was doing so well and is doing so well reaches a stage so early on. So thank you so much, for sharing your
Well,
story.
I just wanted to quickly add, Tapanji, this is why I think every youth needs to understand spirituality. You know, I heard very beautifully that, there can be, somebody asked, should we have more spiritual leaders? And I think the answer so beautifully by a spiritual guru was, we can have every leader become spiritual. And I think that every youth in that way also needs to become spiritual, because this happiness is not lying somewhere outside of us. It's not that a certain figure in our salary will bring us happiness, or a certain, size waist, or fitting into a certain dress, or looking a certain way, or being a certain, being part of a certain clique will bring us happiness. This is why we go to spirituality, is because we discover that happiness is not somebody else or not externally outside of us, but we are that happiness, and we can be happy all the time.
Beautifully put. I think that is what no people are looking for. Because if I ask anybody this question, they always answer that no, it is happiness that they seek. So I think if you look at it, no, from Manjari we heard about the experiences about Patanjali, about the path to spiritualism. From Nandini we heard her own experience, no, of how she has been there and how happiness means what. So somewhere in our lives, are we disconnected with the fact that while we chase happiness and we are no kind of dragged into the rat race as we call it. And I heard somebody said that if you're in the rat race, even if you win, you're still a rat. No, so I think somewhere, how do you be there? How do you be happy? How do you contribute to society? How do you make a difference to people with whatever profession are you in? How can you use karma yoga, no, if that is the way it has to be to make a difference? And how can that bring you happiness? Steps are very simple. They're not very complicated, no. Like you heard Mandy say that the 4 steps he mentioned about was the way Nandi mentioned about just coming, and being a part of social movement and joining the ashram and making a difference to people out there in Rishikesh. And at such a young age, imagine, no, to be able to put it all together has been an inspiring story, which is something that we should think about as we progress in life. So I think I'll not take much time, but ask some question, to Manjuri and Nandini, some last comments from their side. We put it. And I see a lot of comments coming in from people. Manjuri and Nandini will be happy to see that one. A lot of people like what Nandini mentioned. I see that comments coming in. And Manjuri, I think your view also, a lot of people really liked what you mentioned about. And I'm so happy to see, at least,
Yeah, and Tapanji, Tapanji, I actually like this connection and this rat race that you were talking about. I think if you allow, can I have just 1 minute to touch upon that?
Please, please, all yours.
So Tapanji, I think COVID-19 has really put things into perspective. And I think it is a time for all of us to really, really sit down, stop, and really reflect on really what's important. And I think yes, it's easy to get caught up in everything outside because Tapanji, everything is जो जहाँ पे हमें रोशनी दिखती है हम वहीं पे जाते हैं. We've seen the entire story of that old woman who lost her keys in her home and the lights go out, and so she takes her stick and she goes outside of the house and she's looking, and then there's big street lights and she's looking for her keys outside, and she's looking and looking, and there's a passerby, a young person comes by and says, "Grandmother, what are you looking for?" And she's like, "I lost my keys." And he said, "Well, can I help you?" I mean, he's an altruistic young person, and he said, "Can I help you?" And so he gets along and he starts looking for the keys also, and half an hour later, they can't find the keys. And so the young person is like, "Grandmother, where did you lose your keys? Where did you drop them? Can you remember?" And she says, "Well, I dropped them inside the house." And he says, "Well, Grandma, you could bring in an army of people to look for your keys outside. But since you didn't lose them out here, you will never find them." And it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful example is that we've lost that key, we've lost that connection. And no matter how much externally we try to fill and try to bring, and because it's so light and because there's so many distractions, it's so easy to get lost. But as much as we search, we won't find it. And the beauty is either you realize that or you'll be forced to realize that. It's like there isn't I mean, sure, you can live your life and be happy in acquiring more and more and more and more, but once you close your eyes and really introspect, there's an inner GPS that my guru talks about. That inner GPS tells you where you need to go, and it tells this inner GPS is so much smarter than the GPS outside, क्योंकि GPS बाहर जब आप गलत टर्न ले लेते हैं तब बताता है. ये वाला GPS आपको पहले से बीट करने लगता है कि नहीं नहीं ये गलत है. So I think it's really important to tune in, because you have the magnet, you have the GPS, and it will direct you, and it's in every single person. It's equally accessible to everyone.
Beautifully put, Nandini. I think I could not have put it so beautifully as you have put. Especially the GPS story was perfect. I think that is how it is. We should better listen to internal GPS. External is still okay. We can look at it later. Very well put, Nandini. Manjiri, any last comments from your side, before we sum it up?
Uh, well, yeah. So I perfectly agree with Nandini when she said that spirituality is within us, and it's there in every single person. But the way I look at it, it's also there. If you really want to have spirituality in life, just look at children and animals. I think you can learn so much from them. They live from moment to moment. They're happy, they're contented, and what we really need to do is look for that childlike innocence moment to moment, and for me that is spirituality. I think that is the path I would like to tread on.
Brilliant. I think I cannot have a better friends for today's topic. They are there. They have been in this path, they experienced it, and they are leading the path. And they're giving us beautiful, simple stories of how we can be happier, how can we lead a beautiful life, and how can we be more compassionate. Thank you very much to both of you. I think for your time and for the words of wisdom. I am sure it will make a difference to millions of people in trying to understand, and especially the COVID time, like Nandini said, the time to reflect what actually is valuable, because everything that we thought was valuable is getting washed away or getting destroyed at such a hyper speed. I think it's a very, very good time for us to discuss about spiritualism, to understand it more. And it's very simple, it's not very sophisticated, it's not very difficult. Just listening to internal GPS. Thank you very much, Manjari. Thank you very much, Nandini.
Thank
We
you
not
so
have
much.
There's
Thank
guests.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Nandini, you want to
one
say something?
other thing,
Yes,
Tapanji, that I wanted to.
please.
Hello.
We can hear you, please.
Okay, great. I was gonna say one other thing that's just coming up that I think it would be really lovely to share, and you brought up also, Keith, broken connection, and there's a beautiful story that we get shared here with Puja Swamiji and Sadhvi Bhagwati ji and Satsang, which is there's a man who goes into the doctor's office and he says, doctor, wherever I touch it hurts. And he's like, I touch my stomach, it hurts. I touch my head, it hurts. I touch my knees, they hurt. And so he's like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And so the doctor runs all the tests on this person and says, come back after a week. And so the man comes back after a week and meets the doctor again. And the doctor says, well, I've got good news for you and I've got bad news for you. And so what would you like to hear first? And he says, well, obviously, I'd like to hear the good news first. And so he says, well, the good news is your stomach, there's nothing wrong with it. Your head, there's nothing wrong with it. Your knees, there's nothing wrong with it. Actually, every other part of your body is good. And so you're pretty healthy. And so he says, well, then what's the bad news? And he says, well, your finger is broken. And I love that example. Because the finger is how we interact with the world, right? And so हम लोग इतनी सब कुछ होने के बाद भी कुछ भी नहीं लगता है. आप ऐसे लोगों को देख लीजिए जैसे आपको एग्जांपल्स मिलते सुशांत सिंह राजपूत जी के, या that Sia Kakkar who is a young woman. I mean, everything you have and yet something is not filled inside, and it's because we've lost that connection. And because we've lost that connection to our values, to our sanskaras, we've lost the connection to ourselves. And it's so important at this time of COVID to really reenact and re-heal that connection to that divine, to that cosmic energy, and whatever you may call it, whatever name, whatever faith, whatever way. Ganga ji में आप किसी भी घाट के तरह से जाए, important चीज है गंगा जी में जाए. आप चाहे घाट में जाए, चाहे आप पहाड़ से जंप कर जाए, जो भी आपकी इच्छा हो, जैसी भी आपको पसंद है, आप लेकिन शुरू हो जाइए. And that's the most important part, is let's just start somewhere, wherever you are. Swamiji says whenever you wake up, it's morning. So get up and start moving and start serving and start living, and you'll find so many people, so much beauty, so much happiness, and get connected to this beautiful Sangha. I mean, this is a beautiful way of coming together that we have now. थ्रू कोविड, ये भी कोविड का प्रसाद है कि हम अलग अलग जगह में एक साथ आए हैं. And this is a beautiful thing. So it's wonderful to be on this, and I hope that we all restore our connection.
Thank you, Nandini. I think you beautifully summed it up. No, I don't have to sum it anymore. And I see a lot of comments coming in. They want this to continue. But unfortunately, I keep this conversation for only half an hour. I had to end. Otherwise, this can go for hours. I think I see comments, people saying, please continue, But I love all the comments, and thank you for viewers to joining. We would love to continue, but I promise you I'll get them again. Sometime later. I think after a couple of months, we'll talk more about spiritualism. I see that most of you are liking it. We want to really understand it more. But thank you for your time. Thank you, Nandini, for your wonderful stories. Thank you, Manjiri, for all your insights. Thank you very much. It was really great seeing both of you. Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming in for this TNTs. Till next time. We see you again. Thank you very much.
Jai Gange, Jai Gange.
Jai Gange.
Jai Gange.